Hello and welcome to Successful Selling. My name is Pauline Rowson and I'm here to take you through some sales techniques to help you improve your sales performance. I've been involved in selling for many years, both products and services, and am in fact still involved in selling with regards to my books, my audiobooks and my DVDs. What I hope to do is to be able to pass on to you some of the vital skills, tips and techniques that I have learned throughout my career. We're going to be looking at 5 key areas. 1. How to prepare for the sale. 2. The sales interview. 3. We'll be looking at handling objections and closing the sale. 4. We'll be looking at body language, reading and interpreting it. And 5, we'll be looking at how to sell to the different personalities. Whether you're new to selling or whether you're an experienced salesperson and wish to refresh your skills, there'll be something in this program for you. I hope you enjoy watching it. How to prepare for a successful sale. Know your products and services. In order to be a successful salesperson, you need to have really good knowledge of your products and services. But how many times have you been into a shop and asked about a particular product or service only to be met with blank stares? Being a successful salesperson not only means that you need to have this product and service knowledge, but you need to know about the features and, importantly, the benefits of those products and services, because it is the benefits that will help you sell. Understanding features and benefits. When you buy something, you ask yourself, why should I? What's in it for me? And your customers will be asking themselves exactly the same question of your products and services. And it is that question that you need to be able to answer. One of the ways of doing this is to be able to understand the features and benefits of the products and services that you are offering. And to illustrate this point, I would like to take the example of a laptop computer. This computer is portable, which means that you can take it with you wherever you go, and you can work on it, say for example, in the garden. It also has wireless-enabled internet access, which means you can access your emails wherever you are, and you can get access to the internet. So you can email your friends or your colleagues or carry out your research. It is also very lightweight and very compact, which means it's easy to carry and it's easy to store. So you may have noticed that there are 2 magic words that turn a feature into a benefit, and they are which means. So what you need to do is to have a look at the features that you are offering in your products and services. Write a list of them. Then put beside that the words which means, and then add the benefit. And remember, it is those benefits that will help you have a successful sales interview. Know your competitors. So you know your features and benefits. You're ready to go out there and sell, right? Wrong. There's more work to be done before you meet your prospect. You need to know who your competitors are. Why? Because your prospect could very well be buying from that competitor. So make sure that you take some time to do some research. Who are your competitors? What are the products and services that they're offering? How do they differ from your products and services? What are the prices? What's their market share? What's their strengths and their weaknesses? Research your market and your prospect. The more you know about your market and your prospect, the more successful you will be in selling. So take some time to read through the trade journals that are relevant to your particular marketplace. See what is happening in the market and who your competitors are and what they're doing. Also, before you go out to the prospect, can you get any information about that particular company? Maybe you'd like to conduct a company search to find out a little bit more about them. And if it is a consumer that you're going to see, what do you know about that particular group of consumers? Their buying habits, their background, their leisure interests. The more you know about your market and your prospects, the more successful you will be. Prepare your sales material. Make sure that you have all your sales material to hand. You might like to prepare something like a presentation pack, where you could have all your information, your price list, your brochures, leaflets, business card in one very easy place. It looks totally unprofessional to go scrabbling around in your briefcase looking for the right sales literature when it's needed. Setting your objective. What do you want to achieve from the sales interview? Knowing your objective before you go in to meet the prospect is very important. Obviously, it would be very nice to get a sale or an order on that first meeting, but that might not always be possible. You might be selling an expensive piece of equipment or a service, and it takes longer for the prospect to make up his or her mind about buying. So you might need to go back in again at a later stage and sell to him. It could be that you need to return to demonstrate the piece of equipment or product, or that several people might be involved in the decision to buy. Whatever the situation, be flexible. Remember, it's about building relationships. People buy people, and if they like you, they'll be more inclined to buy from you. So take time to get this important aspect right. Getting your appearance right. Getting your appearance right is a very important part of the sales process, and it's one where people can make some mistakes. But there are some questions that you can ask yourself that can eliminate those mistakes. Before I come on to those though, let me just give you some examples of the mistakes that I have seen in my career. I once saw a man who was wearing a very dark suit with pink socks and grey shoes. I'm afraid his credibility was totally blown. And yes, I've also seen a man who was wearing a pair of trousers that were torn at the crotch. Not a very good impression. And if you think it's that only men get this wrong, then it's not. Obviously, women can make mistakes too. And the golden rule for a woman is the more flesh she shows, the less credible she is. So make sure that you get your appearance right. And also don't forget about those shoes. I have seen sales interviews completely blown by people wearing down at heel and scruffy shoes. So what do you wear? Well, before you go to the sales interview, ask yourself 3 questions. Where am I going? Who am I going to see? What shall I wear? The sales interview. Leaving plenty of time. Always leave plenty of time to reach your appointment. Not only do you need to allow for traffic jams or trains being delayed, but ideally you would like to get to the appointment with about 5 or 10 minutes to spare. Why? Because there might be some very important signs that you can pick up when you get to the company or the organisation that you are meeting. For example, what does the building look like? What does the reception area look like? Is it tatty and worn down? If so, what does this tell you about that company? Are they in financial difficulty? Or perhaps they just don't care? When you get into reception, notice how you're greeted. How are the staff towards you? Is it a friendly, warm organisation, or are they slightly hostile or defensive? All of these things give you those clues as to what you might be meeting in your sales interview. Take time to sit in reception and listen to perhaps the receptionist. What kind of phone calls is she taking or he taking? Receptions can be gossip zones. They shouldn't be, but quite often they are. And you will find that other members of staff will pass by them. And again, you can pick up some very valuable information. I was once waiting in the reception area of a very large company going in to sell to the Human Resources Director when two members of staff came out and began to talk about this person in great detail. I can tell you it gave me a lot of information about the prospect I was going to see. Also, take a look around on the walls. Are there certificates? Have the company won any awards? Maybe you can refer to this when you actually get into the sales interview. What is on the desk? Perhaps there is a press cuttings file that you can actually flick through and have a look, and it gives you some valuable information again about the company. There might be a newsletter, again, that you can have a read through while you wait. All this information is very important to you and something that you can draw on in your sales interview with the prospect. Meeting the prospect. First impressions are very important impressions, and there's a saying, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So when do you begin to close the sale? You begin to close it that moment that you meet the prospect. So how should you meet the prospect and how should you greet him or her? Obviously, smile, good eye contact and a firm handshake. And a lot can be denoted by the handshake. Your handshake should be warm and friendly, and that means that it should be tucked into your elbow, not stretched out like this across a desk or even across a room. Make sure that you take the whole hand and not just the fingertips. Women, when they shake hands, often take the fingertips, and I tell them that they need to do the male handshake, which, as I've said, is the whole hand. Give good eye contact, smile. But what if you get the double clutch handshake, where the prospect takes hold of your hand and puts his other one over the top? There, somebody is telling you that they are quite dominant nature. You need to return the grip as much as you can. Sit down, keep your body language open, and don't put anything on the prospect's table, or if it's a boardroom table, don't put anything on that table until you are invited to do so. Why? Because that is their territory, and by placing your presenter or your file on that table, you're invading that territory. Always ask permission before you put something there. Sit back, open body language, and be prepared for the sale. Opening the conversation. This is quite a small section, but again, it is quite important for you to get this right. Before you go into the sales interview itself, you need to just spend a few minutes breaking the ice, setting the scene between you. And you can do this by making very neutral remarks. In Britain, of course, we've always got the weather to talk about, but that might not be so where you're watching this programme. So find something that you can actually talk about that is not related to the sales interview. Perhaps the receptionist gave you good directions and you found the company very easily. Or perhaps the traffic was bad and you got stuck in a traffic jam, but obviously still made time to get to the appointment. Whatever it is, find a neutral subject, just a couple of nice, open, easy questions before you get down to the real business. Selling to the right person. Don't waste time selling to the wrong person. Ideally, if you can, before the sales interview, find out that the person that you are going to sell to has the authority to make a decision. But this isn't always possible. Somebody else might have made the appointment for you and have forgotten to ask the crucial question. So before you get into the sales interview itself, why not simply ask, does anybody else need to be involved in this discussion? It's no good spending an hour selling to this particular person only to find out right at the end of the interview that he or she then has to go away and consult the boss. Opening the sale. Your first task is to get the prospect talking. But remember, at this stage of the sales interview, you haven't yet had a chance to build a relationship with them. So, understandably, they may be a little bit wary of you. You need to be aware of what is called the negative buying motivations that might be going through the prospect's mind. Just think about perhaps when you're at home and there's a knock at the door and you open the door and somebody is trying to sell to you. Think about what is going through your mind at that particular moment. It is the same for your prospect. The negative buying motivations are things like, I don't trust you. I don't need you. No, I don't think you can help me. I'm in no hurry to buy. If you don't turn your prospect over to what are called the positive buying motivations, then you will lose the sale. So how do you switch the prospect from the negative buying motivations to the positive buying motivations? And the first two positive buying motivations are, I am important, consider my needs. That is what the prospect is mentally saying to you. So how do you make the prospect feel important? You do this by getting them to talk. And the way that you get them to talk is by asking them open questions. Open and closed questions. What are open questions? Well, there's one for a start. Open questions are questions that somebody cannot give you a straight yes and no answer to. They begin with certain words like who, what, where, when, why and how. If you ask these questions, you're going to get information. Open questions help you to understand what the prospect wants and needs. They help you to control the conversation and they give you important information about the company or the customer and their requirements. So closed questions. What are closed questions? Well, they are where you will get a simple yes or no answer. They begin with certain words like are, is, can, could, shall, should, would, will. Those are closed questions where you will get a no answer or a yes answer. And if you ask closed questions, what you will find is that you will need to ask two questions instead of one. Let me give you an example. If I was to say to you, did you go out last night? You could say, no. Then I would need to say, what did you do? Then you would give me the information. Whereas if I went straight to the open question and said to you, what did you do last night? You'd be able to open up and give me all the information that I required. So asking open questions are what you need to practice to get the information that you need from your prospect. Open situation questions. So, in order to stimulate discussion, you need to ask what are called open situation questions. These are designed to give you information and to probe the need. Let me give you an example. If you were selling training courses, the sort of questions that you would need to ask of the prospect are, how many staff do you wish to train? What levels are those staff? What are their positions? How many days would you like the training to be over? And what kind of training is it that you're really looking for? You cannot sell your product or service until you have information. Miss out on this vital first stage and you will miss the sale. It's very easy as a salesperson to want to go into the prospect and to rattle off your sales spiel, to tell them all about your wonderful products and your services and to present them with the prices. But remember back to when we were talking about those buying motivations. The prospect has the negative buying motivations in his mind, and you need to switch them over to those positive ones. Remember, I am important, consider my needs. You only do this by getting them to talk about their product or their company and their needs. So you need to make sure that you ask those questions. But what happens if you are put under pressure? What happens if you go into the sales interview and the prospect says, "Come on then, sell to me, tell me what you've got"? Your temptation again is to go into your sales spiel. You need to throw the ball back into their court. So ask that open question. Say something like, for example, first of all, I'd like to ask you a few questions. Tell me, how many staff are you looking to train, Mr. Jones? Beware, though, that you don't ask multiple questions where you run all your questions into one. So you might say something like, well, how many people do you wish to train, Mr. Jones? And what kind of level are they? And when were you thinking of wanting them trained? Which question do you think the prospect is going to answer? The first or the last? Are you going to get the information that you want? I doubt it. So what you need to do is to ask the open question, to shut up and to sit back and listen to the answer. And you also need to be patient, because if you are dealing with somebody who speaks fairly slowly and wants time to think through their answer, please resist the temptation to jump in and answer your own questions. Remember, it's information that you need. Listen actively. Listening skills are a very important part of the sales interview. There are two types of listening: casual listening and critical listening. Now, casual listening is what we do most of the time. Some of the information goes in and some of it goes out. Critical listening is where we are retaining that information and perhaps retrieving and using some of it later on in the sales process. So how do you do critical listening? Well, first of all, you need to listen from the first word and listen attentively. Do not have any negative thoughts about the prospect. Switch them all off. Think at the speed and listen at the speed that the prospect is talking. Make sure that you have good body language, attentive body language, and good eye contact. Listening and understanding skills are essential for the successful sales interview. Will your ideas help me? Remember the positive buying motivations that we talked about earlier. I am important, consider my needs. Well, at this stage of the sales interview, if you've done everything correctly, you will have enough information from the prospect to know what his needs and wants are and have information about the company too. So you are now at the third stage of the positive buying motivations, which is, will your ideas help me? This is where you are able to present your products or services or a particular product or service that will satisfy the prospect's need. So if you've asked those questions and you've listened actively to the answers, you know that Mr. Jones wants a laptop computer that is portable. This laptop computer is portable, which means that Mr. Jones can take it with him wherever he goes around the world. It's also Wi-Fi enabled access, which means that he can access his emails or the internet wherever he is. That is the benefit that we'll be able to sell to Mr. Jones. Buying signals. Buying signals can come through at any stage of the interview, so you need to be aware of them and to look out for them. They can be very simple. It might just be a shift in body language. The prospect might lean slightly forward. Or it could be just a simple "oh" or "ah" or even All of those things give you clues that the prospect is interested in what you have been saying. It can also come through as questions. If the prospect starts asking you questions about your products or services or a particular product or service, then you know that he is interested. You can capitalise on this by going on to strengthen the benefits of that product and service that you are offering. Handling objections. What are the problems? Objections can come at any stage throughout the sales interview. But if you've followed the guidance in this programme and you've done those initial first stages correctly, then you will eliminate some of those objections. Don't be afraid of them, because objections are a buying signal. They show interest. If we look at our positive buying motivations again, remember the first three are: I am important, consider my needs, will your ideas help me? The objections is the fourth stage of the positive buying motivations. What are the problems? If you answer the objections successfully, you can then go on to close the sale. Golden rules on objection handling. Listen carefully and patiently to understand what the real objection is. Get your inner voice right. It's very easy to go on the defensive when you're met with an objection, but if you've done your homework and you know your products and services and you know the strengths of their features and benefits, then you can handle that objection more confidently. Be positive and be sincere and honest. Sometimes when you get an objection, you're not really quite sure what the prospect means. Or you might instinctively go into panic mode and think, oh, how can I answer this? One very good technique to help you over this is to throw the ball back in the prospect's court. And you do this by asking a question. Probe, get a bit more information. A simple question can be something along the lines of, really, what makes you say that? Or, really, can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean? And you'll find that the prospect will rephrase his objection in a slightly different way. And this can help you get the real objection, and it can also give you a lot more information. You will then be able to present the right benefit to answer that particular objection. Example objections. Let's take a look at a couple of objections. One of the ones that you might meet is where the prospect says, I think your company's too small. What does he mean by that? You need to probe and get more information. What is he actually saying? Is he afraid that you won't be able to handle the size of the contract, or perhaps deliver the quantity that he wants? So this is a situation where you need to go back in and ask that question. Oh, really? What do you mean by too small? Get him to tell you exactly what he means, and then you can go back in and present the benefit. It might be in this particular case that you could give him a couple of clients' names or testimonials of other companies' contracts that you've handled successfully. Another objection that you might get is when the prospect turns round to you and says, oh, I used your company before, total disaster. Your instinct might very well be to go on the defensive and jump in and say, oh, well, we've improved since then. And the prospect comes back and says, what, since last month? Okay, so here, when you meet that kind of objection, as I said before, get the right inner voice and go back in and ask a question. I'm sorry to hear that. When exactly was this? Then he can give you information. You might also like to ask the question, what exactly went wrong? Then getting that information, you can concentrate on doing a PR job. And by that I mean a public relations job. You can start to build relationships with that client in the hope that you will eventually get that contract or that sale. Closing techniques. Helping the prospect to buy. Right, we've come to the final part of the sales presentation, and that is the close. And it's the most exciting part because it's where you need to get the sale or the order and come away with the business. But it's also one of the most difficult areas for salespeople to deal with. I remember that when I was a young saleswoman first out on the road, I had a real hang-up about this, that I had to close the sale and I had to come away with the business. So in order to deal with this to begin with, I needed to change my inner voice. The way of doing this is to think about the products and the services that you are offering. Like I did, I had a great product. I had great features and benefits. I really had something to offer the prospect. And by rephrasing this and thinking that I could help the prospect to buy and solve his or her problems, put a whole new perspective on these closing techniques. Solving the prospect's problem close. If we could solve the prospect's problem or objection, would he buy? An example of this was when I worked with a brewery, and they found that the same objection came up time after time. So one of the closing techniques that they used was this particular one. If they could solve the prospect's problem, would he buy?
I'm a bit wary about using a small independent brewery like yours.
That's an objection.
Really? Why is that?
That's probing with an open question.
Will you be able to deliver the quantities I require?
Yes, we can, and we do regularly to other public houses of a similar size to yours and larger.
Here you can give relevant testimonials and stress the features and benefits.
But you only deliver on a Thursday, and Thursday's my day off.
This is another objection.
So if we could arrange delivery for you at the beginning of the week, would you be prepared to order through us?
This is solving the prospect's problem, and now you can go on to close.
Well, I suppose if you could deliver on Tuesday, that would be okay.
Right, Tuesday it is. How many barrels would you like to order for the first delivery? 6 or 12?
Here we've also used another close, which is the alternative close.
Better make it 15.
So, sale completed. Here we've used two closing techniques, solving the prospect's problem close, and we've also added another one, the alternative close, by asking them how many barrels they would like, 6 or 12. The alternative close. Giving the prospect an alternative when closing can make it easier for them to make a decision. Here are some further examples of closing techniques. When would you like delivery? This week or next week? How would you like to pay? By cheque or credit card? Which colour would you prefer? Red or blue? This is a really useful closing technique to use, both when telephone selling and in face-to-face selling. The fear close. The fear close is used to put pressure on the prospect then and there, so that you're putting him or her on the spot to make a decision. Here are some examples of the fear close. You could say you need to make a decision now to take advantage of a special offer, which only lasts until the end of the week. Or, if you place your order now, I can give you 20% discount. You might like to say something along the lines of, we've had a lot of people interested in this particular product or service. So if you don't make a decision soon, we're going to run out of this particular model. Those are all designed to put the pressure on that prospect to make a decision, and hopefully you can clinch the deal then and there. The assumptive close. This is similar to solving the prospect's problem close. If you could satisfy the prospect's point, would he then go on to buy? For example,
assuming then that we can get this model for you by Tuesday, are you prepared to go ahead and place the order, Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Here the prospect wanted a certain model on a certain day, and because we were able to guarantee that, he then went ahead and placed the order. Let's take a look at another example.
Assuming then that you are satisfied that complete confidentiality is guaranteed, will you buy from us?
If the prospect says he's not sure, then there are some other objections that you haven't yet uncovered. Here you need to go back in and ask an open question. For example, what is it that you're not sure about, Mr. Jones? Try and find out what he really is saying, and then go on to answer that objection and try closing again with one of the techniques that we've been looking at. So let me just recap on those positive buying motivations. I am important. Consider my needs. Will your ideas help me? What are the details? What are the problems? I approve. Body language. Just as someone will form an impression of you through your body language, you will also be getting important signals from the prospect's body language. So you need to be aware of body language and able to interpret and read it, which will give you vital clues throughout the sales presentation. Different cultures use different body language, so if you're selling internationally, you also need to be aware of the body language in the country that you're selling to. Distance and personal space. Personal space can vary between country to country, and you need to be aware of this when dealing with individuals. For example, in Britain, the personal space that we feel comfortable with is about 3 feet, which is where the old saying comes from, keep them at arm's length. Other nationalities have different personal space distances. For example, in Italy or India, you will find that individuals will get a lot closer to you. So you need to be aware of this when selling to various different people. You also need to be aware of the personal space distance that somebody has with their desk. That, in effect, is their territory. And if you get too close to them, or you put something on their desk, then you're invading their territory without their permission. So just be aware of that when dealing with different people. Also, you may find that people get very close to you, and you can find that intimidating. Resist the urge to step back. Keep good positive body language and good eye contact. Body movements. Watch for body movements throughout the sales presentation, because these can give you vital clues as to how it is going. For example, does the prospect sit forward or lean forward when you say something? This means that they're interested. It can be a positive buying signal. Alternatively, does the prospect sit back, maybe even fold his or her arms, or cross their legs? That is closed body language, and it is a negative buying signal. So you need to be aware of what it is that you are saying and what the prospect doesn't like about that. There are also some other body language signals that you need to be aware of. For example, does the prospect rub his ear? This could indicate that he doesn't like what he's hearing. Or maybe the prospect actually rubs his neck. This can be indicative of him being uncomfortable with something that you're saying. What about rubbing the eyes? That could mean that he or she doesn't like what they're seeing. Perhaps you've shown them some literature or a price list or demonstrating something that they're not quite sure about. But you also need to be aware that body movements or body language signals can sometimes be a force of habit. I'll give you an example of this. I worked with a young lady once who, when she spoke, she always put her hand over her mouth. Now that body language signal can indicate that somebody is lying. But in this particular case, this young lady used to have bad skin when she was young. So she was very embarrassed about it, and she used to put her hand over her mouth to cover up her bad skin. So you need to be aware of the whole picture of the body language signals. What are they saying to you? Is it the true picture? But also be aware that they might also be a habit on the part of the prospect. Facial expressions. Throughout the sales presentation, you need to be aware of facial expressions. Is the prospect surprised, wary, puzzled, frowning? Some people wear their hearts on their sleeves and are very easy to read, where others are not, particularly if they're good at negotiating skills. Here you need to look out for those body movement signals that we've just talked about before. Eye contact. Make sure you give good eye contact. If the prospect isn't looking at you and not giving you very good eye contact, then try asking them a question, one of those open questions we spoke about earlier, to get them talking. Usually then, their head comes up and they lock eyes with you. You can hold the eye contact for a moment and then break it off and look away. Eye contact is a positive buying signal. I remember once when I was pitching to a group of solicitors. There were about 15 partners around the boardroom table, and I was trying to win them as a marketing client. At that stage, I didn't know who the decision maker was. Around the table, there were some friendly faces, some smiles and nods. The danger is then that you end up talking or selling to those friendly faces, when in fact you shouldn't, because they're already on your side. You need to look for the person who's not giving you eye contact. In this particular case, one man was sitting, scribbling away, writing notes, and he refused to look up. I didn't know whether he was listening to me at all, of course. Then I said something and his head came up. He gave me eye contact, and I knew at that moment that whatever I said was something that he was very interested in. At that particular time, I was talking about the image of his law firm. I then discarded the rest of my sales presentation, focused on image, focused on selling to him, and I came away with the business. Body posture. Although your prospect might be giving you defensive body language, for example, folding his or her arms, crossing the legs, and sitting stiffly back in the seat, you need to be aware that you are not giving out any defensive body language signals yourself. Keep your body language open and your posture back but not stiff. What you can do is you can also subtly mirror your prospect's body language. This helps to build rapport. By mirroring, I don't mean that you cross your arms when he or she crosses their arms, but when they sit forward, then gently sit forward yourself, leaning into the conversation. When they sit back, then move back, give them space. By doing this, you will enhance your relationship and build rapport. Impressive signals. If you need to take notes throughout the sales presentation, then always ask permission first. Try not to take too many notes because when you do, your eye contact drops and you won't be looking at the prospect. Angle your body towards the prospect rather than going head on. Try and look interested by keeping your body language open and sit back. Don't slouch, don't doodle, don't frown and don't impatiently tap your pen or jiggle your leg. Selling to different personalities. People buy people. If someone likes you, they're more inclined to buy from you. So what we're doing in the sales presentation is enhancing that likability. But how do you get somebody to like you when we're all very different? What I'd like to do is to take you through 4 basic personality types and show you how by using this you can enhance the relationships. It's not quite as simple as this because people are very complex, and you also need to take into consideration behaviour and intellect. But at least by going through these 4 basic personality types of dominance, social, measured and compliant, you will have some understanding of how you can build better rapport with your prospect. Dominant individuals. Dominant individuals can be authoritative and quite often superior. They're very quick speaking and quick thinking individuals, often very time conscious and driven. They can be ambitious and can quite often be at the head of an organisation. They're also fairly impatient individuals and can be a little bit intolerant. They're problem solvers and they're often decision makers. So how do you recognise whether you've got a dominant individual in front of you? Well, you can get signals right from the beginning. So, for example, when you turn up at the company, you might find that the person that you're visiting has a car parking space with his or her name on it. When you go into their office, again, look around you and look for clues as to whether this is a dominant individual that you're dealing with. The large desk will give some indication that this is a dominant person. Likewise, they might have a large chair behind them. As status is important to the dominant individual, take a look at their walls and see if there are any certificates or pictures on their walls. They might have a photograph of their boat or their racing car, or of them shaking hands with famous people. Dominant individuals will give you a very firm handshake, and they can often do that double clutch handshake that I spoke about earlier. In this case, you need to return the pressure and make sure that your handshake is very firm. A dominant individual will not waste time on the social chit-chat. They will want to get to the business straight away. You may very well get that situation again, which I spoke of, when they ask you to say, "Come on, tell me why you're here, sell to me." You need to go into the sales presentation fairly quickly, but asking them open questions to get them talking. A dominant individual is very concerned with those 2 buying positive motivations that I spoke about earlier. I am important, consider my needs. The more you can get the dominant person talking, the more successful you will be in your sales presentation. Social individuals like people, and they like to be liked. That is important to them. Therefore, they can be quite easy to sell to, because whilst you're out to impress the prospect, They are out to impress you. Social individuals are often quite good at selling because they like people. They are adaptable, participative, cooperative, and friendly. How do you recognise a social individual? Well, you do still get some of the signs that you get with the dominant individual because status is also important to socials. But there will be a difference in the body language. For example, when you met the dominant person, the hand would be stiff and outstretched and the handshake very firm. With a social individual, the elbow will be tucked into the waist. You may still get the firm handshake, but they will be putting you at your ease. They will ask you to sit down and they will ask you questions to break the ice between you. You will get much more of the social chit-chat with a social individual. If you ask them a question about their family or a photograph on their wall, then they will start giving you their life history. So with social individuals, you can take time to relax and you can build the relationship because relationships are very important to them. Body language will be open and friendly. These are people who are saying, I want to be liked. You can give them the detail of the sales presentation, but with our dominant individual, you shouldn't give too much detail because they don't like it. Our social individuals will take a bit of detail, but again, not too much. Take time to build relationships with this person, and you will win them over. Measured individuals. Measured individuals are much more logical and analytical. They are cautious people. Measured, steady, don't like taking risks. They will take them, but they like to weigh up all the details beforehand. These people are very reliable. They're often slower speaking. And I often say that they engage the brain before they open the mouth. Many engineers and lawyers and accountants fall into this category. So if you're selling to one of those in the professions, then just be aware that they might be a measured individual. Status is not important to these people. So you will not get the big desk and the big chair and the pictures on the wall. This person may be sitting back in their chair. Their body language might be closed. They may be looking at you quite warily. Because remember, I've said they're cautious. They're weighing up everything that you say before they make a commitment. Here, you need to take time to break the ice. It can be quite difficult to gauge measured individuals into conversation. And this is where your open questions are very important. You need to get them to open up and to talk to find out exactly what they're looking for. In the sales presentation, you need to slow down and take more time. Make sure that you give them all the detail that they want. They will ask for it, and you might need to go over it again and again. Be patient. Be tolerant, build a relationship with them because they can be very loyal and reliable prospects. Compliant individuals. Compliant individuals like the rules and the regulations. They can often be very systematic people and can be bureaucratic. They're very precise and they like a lot of detail. They also are very punctual and would like punctuality in you. So if you're late for the sales presentation, then that's a minus point against you to start with. They're not terribly good with people, so it will take you a lot longer to build a relationship with them. Quite often, compliant people can have a high intellect. And if this is so, then you can find them in jobs like systems analysts or researchers. Because they haven't got the natural people skills, you will also find that their body language might be slightly withdrawn. They can be shy and self-effacing, so you'll get the lowered eye contact and possibly a bit of the hunched body language. Here you need to take a lot of time to break the ice. They need a lot of reassuring, so you'll need to go over the details perhaps several times before they are happy with it. So be patient and take time to build the relationship. You might also find that compliant individuals are easily agreeing, and therefore they might be nodding with you and saying yes, yes, when they really need to ask a question about the product or the features or benefits. So you can come away without really knowing whether you've actually got through to this person and whether they have actually agreed to the sale. So here again, make sure that you go through the proposal stage by stage and get a firm commitment before leaving. Summing up. So, to recap on what we have covered, here is a vital checklist. Do your research, prepare thoroughly. Know your products, their features and benefits. Practice your questioning techniques and your listening skills. Be attuned and understand other people. Be sincere and genuine. Always believe in what you are selling and always leave on a positive note. I hope you've enjoyed watching this programme and I wish you every success as a salesperson.